Are you listening? Damn.
Welcome to another edition of the AFC North Talk here with Ace, Q, and Tony, who is on the road. Shout out to Tony. That's commitment right there. Thank you
running from this running back conversation.
Yeah.
Couldn't miss it. Wouldn't miss this running back conversation for anything.
We appreciate everybody that is here. And before we get started with the running back, I always like for you, don't forget to follow us on Twitter. I'm just going to show you what happened last week. That's the rankings of you guys, O-line, which was in line with us. Bengals edged the Steelers for number 3. Barely, but they edged it 1,111. Well, that's a pretty number, 1111. So the Browns killed it.
And make sure you guys are hitting that follow button on the AFC North Talk Twitter. You guys really appreciate that.
We that's during the season we'll do some cool things on Twitter, so make sure you follow us there. And let's go now with this week's. And so far only 192 votes, but you can see the Browns right now again destroying this running back poll, and then the Bengals second, Ravens third, and the Steelers fourth.
Wait, the Bengals are second in this poll?
Yes. Bengals are represented.
We are.
Bengals fans, listen. Bengals fans are representing this.
Man, he's trash.
Only 192 right now. But the Browns killing it again. So make sure you go ahead and vote if you want to hear your your voice, our polls. We're gonna be doing more polls. So again, make sure you follow us on Twitter, AFC North Talk. Okay, let's go jump right into it. Number 4. We're gonna go with number 4 this week. Last week was pretty boring. Let's be honest. Last week was boring. I don't remember one video that we just all agreed. Like literally, we all agree. And for those of you, we had no planning before this. We never planned. Nobody reads no notes. Where we went 4, 3, 2, 1. Shock everybody the same.
Well, you say that, Sonny. I mean, I wouldn't. Yes, we all agreed, but it wasn't exactly a, wasn't a nice agreement. We were in violent agreement at times.
No, I agree, but I'm saying in the rankings. Yes, I agree. There was some controversial debate, but even the person that was, controversial still ranked his team 4th. I'm just saying. Anyway, let's go number 4. Hey, I'm gonna start with you, man. Who you had number 4 on the running back conversation?
Oh man, you're not gonna like this, Sonny, because we're starting some controversy early.
Okay.
And I went back and forth in my head between these two teams. And you guys know I take rookies into account, right? So I'm looking at this from all angles. And unfortunately, Sonny's not going to like this. And the Ravens Nation is not going to like this. I'm actually going to rank the Ravens 4th. And this is a division that has, talented running backs. You're talking about Najee Harris. You're talking about J.K. Dobbins. I love Gus Edwards personally. But when I looked at the Ravens, the thing that stuck out to me is which one of these guys is a number 1 back? It's hard to say because Dobbins is small. He's a small guy that might not be able to handle that whole load. They're both 2 great backs, but if you were to take them and put them on other teams in the NFL, could you definitively say that they would be starters? And that's where I was looking like these guys look like an amazing committee together. They're a great 1-2 punch, outside of Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. I think that they're the second best 1-2 punch in the division by far. You looked at what they did last year, each with 800 yards, each amassing some touchdowns. The only thing is the weird part was when I put in the filter for 50% of the snaps, neither guy had that. And it was kind of weird. Obviously, they were in a 3-headed backfield last year with Mark Ingram. These 2 guys clearly were the best of that tandem. But when you have a guy like Todd Gurley visiting to potentially sign with your team, that means that you don't feel like you have a guy. I think that they have a running back by committee tandem, but I don't think that they have that guy that really I could put above a Joe Mixon, that I could put above a Nick Chubb, that I could put above a Najee Harris. And that is why I went with the Ravens at 4.
Let me refute something here, and then I'm gonna let it go because we're gonna keep going, and I don't want to get stuck at 4th. What I'll say is, you're putting at 4th the team that led the league in rushing, right?
Yes.
It wasn't like one player was 4,000 yards and the other 2 were just scraps. And you did that over a rookie.
But you have Lamar Jackson, and
I
this is the thing.
I understand.
You have Lamar Jackson, and you can do an option, whether it's I'm going to go with Gus Edwards or I'm going to go with Lamar Jackson. 90% of the time, people are going to go with Lamar Jackson. So because of that, it's going to, and I learned this against Gus Edwards because we were the first ones that Lamar took off on where he did the whole spin. That is something that defenses have to account for. Now, if you have a pocket quarterback and you have someone given that option, they're going to concentrate completely on that running back.
So you're
Lamar
basically
does
saying
help the Ravens.
You're penalizing them.
And you have to take into account Lamar Jackson's running. Yeah. So you got to take those rushing yards out of there.
Well, if we take those 2, if we take Lamar Jackson's yards, and again, I'm going to move on from this. If you take those 2, the Lamar Jackson's older yards, put Lamar Jackson zeros, my 2 guys have more yards than the Bengals.
Because Joe Mixon got hurt after 6 games.
But doesn't matter. And
it does matter.
Okay, let me just take Joe. Let me just take Joe Mixon away for a moment, right? Okay. You're saying that those 2 guys are not better than a rookie that hasn't taken a snap.
Najee Harris, no, I cannot say that. Najee Harris was a first-round running back. He had a production score of 99. There's a lot to like about Najee Harris. And that's what it really comes down to. Yes, I'm projecting, but at the end of the day, Najee Harris is 6'1", 232 pounds. Aaron Dobbins is 5'10", 209. It's not a comparison. I had Gio for years. Gio is a great running back. He's not a number 1 running back. You can't straight up depend on J.K. Dobbins to carry the full load.
So let me go to Super Chat and then Q. I'm going to go with you. Gus Edwards is built almost the same as Dick D. Henry.
Okay, man, come on.
And nearly the same 40 time and has a 5.2 average yards per carry, while Henry has 5.
Okay, Thomas, I know your argument. I know. Well, Thomas, you're not doing Gus Edwards any favor by making an argument that he might be better than Derrick Henry. That's just... because I know that's not your argument, is that he's the better than the best running back in football. I don't think that's that I don't know what that helps. I mean, I get what you're saying. You saying he has more potential. I don't know, but come on, sample size and carries do matter. So this is definitely not gonna be like last week's show because we are not all in agreement here.
We started a bang.
All right. Well, I'm put Cincinnati Bengals at 4 here. And I had a difficult time choosing between the unproven, which is Pittsburgh, and Najee Harris, and whatever they're bringing back there. It's still Benny Snell's the second running back. I don't know what Tony can inform me better on what the Steelers are going to do behind him, but Najee Harris is obviously the most important part of that. And then you got Joe Mixon, and now it's Samaje Perine. It's not really Gio. It's not a 1-2 punch anymore. It's just Joe Mixon and a bunch of dudes. And I really had to take a deep dive into what Joe Mixon did. And look, Ace brings up a good point. Joe Mixon did not play a full season last year, but he did play in 6 games. In those 6 games, he really wasn't playing as well as you would expect a guy that's held in the esteem of Joe Mixon to go. I'm talking about an abysmal 3.6 yards per attempt. That's pretty bad. I mean, I think Pittsburgh and James Conner last year were at 4. Joe Mixon being at 3.6, I get he didn't play the whole season. I get you could say the offensive line was a reason that happened. But again, I'm comparing it to what James Conner did for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And that was even worse run blocking offensive line than the Cincinnati Bengals. So I don't really see any reason to do that there. And if that's your bell cow, it's been 4 years of Joe Mixon. He's had 2 good seasons, 1 decent rookie year, and then last year was really lost to injury. I think if you're asking which one of these players that you would feel the most confident about when you talk about the bell cow for each running back room, Nick Chubb, you would feel pretty confident about. J.K. Dobbins, I'm pretty optimistic and confident about based on what he did last year and his averages last year, because I know he didn't have great cumulative numbers, but he did have pretty strong averages. And then Najee Harris or Joe Mixon. And even from what we saw of Joe Mixon, it looked like it was a step back from what he had did the year before. And we were talking about him having to take a step up that season. So I think that's why we have to put Joe Mixon here at 4. Now, ultimately, he can play out of this. Ultimately, they can get as high as number 2 in this conversation. But right now, you got Joe Mixon there, and then really just, guys who spent the last few years bouncing around on club rosters. Samaje Perine been all over the place, and then after that, it's what Travion Williams. I've never heard of him, and then you got Captain America as your 4th string guy who you're kind of hoping to develop. So, yeah, that's probably why I had to go to the Bengals there at 4. Just wasn't impressed with what Mixon did last year. His averages weren't great, and they weren't even better than what James Conner was doing last year with a bad offensive line. And I think you have to be penalized with that. And if you're going to ask me, who do I have more faith in at this point, it's probably going to be Najee Harris.
And I get that, but you talked about the averages, and that's correct. But at the end of the day, Joe Mixon had 400 yards in 6 games, which was half of what J.K. Dobbins had. Yes, J.K. Dobbins had better averages, but he had half of his production in 6 games.
Yeah,
I understand that. It's also an overall question too with Joe Mixon. I mean, this is somebody whose big numbers cumulatively have come down to large amount of attempts. He hasn't really averaged more than 85 yards a game. You're looking at elite running backs that usually are up in that 88 to 90 range. And again, I have faith that I think J.K. Dobbins is going to be an elite running back. I know that Nick Chubb's already an elite running back, and I feel like Najee Harris can. I don't know if Joe's going to make that jump yet. I'm still questionable on that, and I hope that he does make that jump. But as of right now, the numbers, I just can't make that jump.
2 seasons of 1,100 yards? Nobody else has done that?
Yeah, but the averages do matter, though. Like, the averages do matter, I think, more for running backs in this conversation, at least for me.
But he hasn't really been able to be the bell cow. Like, Gio has been there. This is legit going to be his first season.
In the modern NFL, though, you're always going to be splitting carries, though. I don't think there's really a ton of running backs out here other than Derrick Henry that are truly that number 1 guy. And Derrick Henry's only able to do it because he is uniquely qualified in his size and strength. I think it's kind of a consensus that these guys get so injured in the modern NFL that you're not going to be able to just be able to have the one bell cow guy anymore. And your splits, your averages now for that position just are going to ultimately end up weighing a little bit more than what you do cumulatively. I mean, take no look further than what happened to Leonard Fournette, who had an 1,100-yard season, got cut, couldn't even get anybody to trade for him because teams really do value those averages.
Yeah, right, I agree. But also, if you talk about averages, you got to talk about the receiving game as well. Joe Mixon, although he didn't do great in the run game, if you talk about receiving averages, he is superior to J.K. Dobbins and some other guys in the division when it comes to that.
Let me say something here, Ace, because you're talking about one guy, right? We're talking about the running back group. So if we're ranking running backs, right, you can say, Nick Chubb, maybe Joe Mixon.
We did this argument last year though with
no, because we're not adding
the Myles Garrett in terms of the sum being better. Like Myles Garrett is Myles Garrett. At the end of the day, if you have Derrick Henry in this conversation, you're not looking at his backup. You're going to say Derrick Henry is.
I agree, but your point is essentially the Mixon is that much better than 2 really good running backs. So let's say, when we were talking about Myles Garrett, and this is just a side point, Myles Garrett's an A, and if you had 2 B+, will 2 B+ be better than an A? Probably, right? Well, A might be better than 2 C's, right? Yeah, that point.
Number 1 running
back. You're saying like I think what you're.
Yeah, I think what I'm saying.
I think what he's saying is an A+ better than is A+ alone with 2 C's or D's behind it better than 2 B+ or like 3 B's straight up, like. And I think that's ultimately the question. Like, if you're asking what's a deeper running back room, then you would obviously go with the Ravens. But I think the question that Ace is asking here is,
and you wouldn't go with Pittsburgh.
Is Joe Mixon so much better than J.K. Dobbins that it really don't matter if Gus Edwards is? I think that's ultimately what this debate is about.
Yeah. If they had a 1,000-yard running back, then I would say, you got to include one of those guys in there. The Cleveland Browns have one 1,000-yard runner in Nick Chubb, and then they had an 800-yard runner in Kareem Hunt. And we all have also seen Kareem Hunt, with the Chiefs, so we know what he's capable of.
Yep. So let me go, since Tony looks like Tony's having issues here. So I'm gonna go with my number 4. My number 4 actually was the Steelers. Now, I will say this. I think what Q's points were well taken. But I'm going to go with the proven commodity over the rookie. The rookie, we have seen so many amazing effing rookies. They just don't pay out. That's one of my reasonings. I always basically treat the rookies as a C-level player, second/third stringer until they prove me. I'm not. This is not for me to say that Najee Harris will not be good. I did the same thing with PQ last year. I did the same thing with JK last year, and I'll do it with any rookie, right? Bateman for me and the Ravens receivers. It's just I need to see it, right? And Najee looks amazing from college. And Leonard Fournette looked amazing from college. He has been good, not great. And like Fournette, other running backs that we know they have been great in college, from Bama, non-Bama. So I think Najee Harris might be good. I don't want to diminish it. It's for everybody that might say like, "Yo, the Harris might be a beast." Yeah, he might be a beast. And next year when we talk about the running backs, Steelers might be first. I doubt it, but he might be that guy. But at this point, Harris, for me, is an unproven commodity. Benny Snell is a proven average at best running back. And Derek McFadden is also another, at best, at his best day, an average running back. So if the Harris doesn't pan out, that running back group is not great. It's just not. So for that reasons, I just put them at fourth. We're going to move at number 3 as Tony, again, is having issues. So, before that, Ace, talk to them about our sponsors.
Let's talk about summer. Are you guys ready to get that summer bod? We're partnering with our partner, Manscaped, to make sure that you guys keep your ball fro from the grow. You got to make sure that you don't have that. You got to make sure that your package down there isn't looking like Quincy's man bun, isn't looking like Ace's mustache. You got to be looking like Tony's top of his head. That's what you got to be looking like. And Manscaped, we're ready to get you guys together. Obviously, we got Father's Day coming up this weekend. It's kind of an awkward gift, but it's something that your dad might need. So make sure that you check out the Manscaped package. We're offering 20% off with our code. It's AFC North Talk. You go to manscaped.com. Be sure to use that code and make sure that you're ready. We've got the new 4.0, the Lawnmower 4.0. I'm going to tell you this. When I first used the Lawnmower 3.0, right, I had some accidents. I'm not going to lie, fellas. I was I didn't have the most surgical hands, and I had some nicks here, some nicks there. What I can tell you about this Lawnmower 4.0, my hands have not changed, people. The Lawnmower 4.0 is better, new, improved, and you can charge it with a cable. It's all kind of stuff that you can do. You can be in the shower and use it. It's super, super convenient for you to be able to do that. You don't have to worry about those nicks. You don't have to worry about taking a razor and cutting yourself. You don't have to worry about putting the shower power on when your wife or your girlfriend's not looking. You can get right with the Lawnmower 4.0. So please be sure to hit it up. It's going so crazy that some of the packages have actually sold out. So if you can, make sure that you grab the performance package and make sure that you're good to go. It's always good to upgrade. I can say I tried the 3.0 and the 4.0. Definitely worth upgrading to the 4.0 if you want to get that more clean cut. So shout out to Manscaped. Once again, it's the promo code AFC North Talk.
Okay. Now, and again, if Tony gets here, we'll make sure he puts his picks and all that. But number 3, Ace, who you have for number 3?
Number 3, and that's what I went to. I understand some people are looking at it as a group, and I'm not against that at all. But I think having that main back is important. And this is why I went with the Steelers here. I went back and forth. It was really close between them and the Ravens. Honestly, wanted to put the Ravens here. But Najee Harris just has so much that he brings. And I have to go to next-gen stats. Obviously, like you said, he has not played a game yet. So I'm going to go with some NFL next-gen stats here. Obviously, 6'1", 232 pounds, 99 production, 90 athleticism, which is insane, considering that Dobbins, I think, was only 1 point higher than him on his athleticism score. And then you talk about a 99 draft score. And just think about running backs that are taken in the first round. This is a position that obviously has died down in previous years. The value has gone down. Usually you're waiting until the second, third round. You usually can pick a running back in any round. But Najee Harris is special. And when we did the pre-draft show, my nightmare scenario was him going to a team like the Steelers. And I think that he's going to bring another dimension to them. He's going to help Ben out with him being an older quarterback. And then he's got the 6.46 NFL draft starter score, and he's going to get fed. I mean, honestly, there's nobody there. Benny Snell isn't going to really share that much of that rock with him. He's just going to be a monster, and he's going to eat a lot. So I don't think that it's far-fetched to think that he could potentially end up with 1,000 yards this season. He's the only guy there. He's the only mouth to feed. And you're talking about a guy, you talk about Alabama running backs, they have a great resume. Mark Ingram with the Ravens, you talk about Derrick Henry. I mean, these guys play in the SEC, they're monsters. I mean, he's an AFC North running back. So for me, I'm going to have to go with Najee here. I'm just banking on the potential. At the end of the season, we can see how this plays out. But if I'm taking my lottery ticket right now and I had to go to Vegas and put some money down, I put my money on Najee Harris as the third running back.
Okay. Q.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Steelers here. Najee is a very good receiver out the backfield as well as a runner. He's actually pretty underrated blocker, in my opinion, too. I had some questions about his production, but Tony's kind of cleared that one up to me where I don't have those questions anymore because you can kind of figure out why the production numbers weren't what you expected of him coming out in Alabama with the crowded backfields that he's had to deal with. Look, this one came down to me is, look, I pretty much equated Najee Harris and Joe Mixon, and then you're talking about the backups, and as awful as Benny Snell was last year, I still think he has a little bit more upside than a dude like Samaje Perine, who just nobody has found a real use to hang on to and use consistently on the NFL roster, and I think that's ultimately what gave Pittsburgh the leg up here in this conversation. But again, it's real tentative. Like, these are, I could see the argument easily for Joe Mixon ahead of Najee Harris. I'm just, at this point, I had to look at the whole room, and I think Pittsburgh has a slightly stronger room right now than Cincinnati does.
I mean, that's fair. I'm not mad at that at all, but I can let you know that he is going to be the Bell Courthouse guy. Like, there's no way that Samaje Perine is going to be getting like Geo-type snaps at all this season. They've already talked about it. But
yeah, there's no way that there's also no way that Benny Snell's going to see a ton of snaps or whoever that second running back is going to see a ton of snaps here. Like, it's going to be all on Najee Harris when they run the ball, because they don't run it that often there in Pittsburgh. Well, they didn't run it that often there last year, and they tend to not run it as much when Ben's out there.
The only situation that's 50-50 with the talented guys is Cleveland. It's crazy. Like, when you look at the stats, it's like Cleveland has two guys that get, equal shares of like starter snaps equally, and it's crazy.
Yeah, and they do the receiving game and everything. I told everybody before last season, 500 rushing attempts, 500 passing attempts, and I forget what the other 500 was for, but it was something important.
Okay, so we have Tony back, and Tony has been dealing with some signal problems, so Tony requested to do 4-1.
Yeah.
So did you get all in? So you heard what we did with fourth, and
I am shocked. I am shocked by Sonny. I didn't hear your 4 because I did hear that Ace. I think you put Baltimore at 4, and Quincy, you put Cincinnati at 4. Sonny, am I right in saying that you put the Steelers at 4?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
Okay. Surprised. Very surprised to see that J.K. Dobbins 4. I know Sonny's going to break out. I forget what it is because obviously I'm on the road and I have access to my computer. There is an advanced stat, and I forget if it's rushing yards over expectation or something like that J.K. Dobbins was number 1 in last year.
Yeah.
But I forget. It's even better than Chubb, but I forget what it is right now. Anyway, my number 4.
I think it's at the contact.
Is it yards after? Is that what it is? Sonny's smiling right now. He knows. He's ready to pull that.
I'm not even going to bring that argument, but go ahead. You're 4-1.
Yeah, so look, I don't take rookies into account for doing that when I do this, and so it's easy for me to put the Steelers 4 without taking Najee Harris into account. You lose James Conner, Benny Snell last year. Benny Snell football. He came into the league, talked about himself in the third person, and he was supposed to be the guy that was going to be the Steelers' short yardage back. That was Benny Snell football. The Steelers were, as I've talked about before, the worst in the National Football League in those situations. Now, you can't put it all on Benny Snell. Obviously, the offensive line has to take a significant part of the blame there. But still, this team, when it needed 1 or 2 yards, could not get it. Benny Snell was supposed to be that guy. He has been, a failure in that regard, no doubt about it. Now, they bring in Kalen Ballage, who, look, and I mocked Kalen Ballage when they first got it to 2 yards per carry. A lot of that has to do with the fact, though, that he has been a short yardage guy. And I think if you look at, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I believe, he converts something like 75% of all short yardage, which is relatively good around the National Football League. So Ballage and Snell will compete for that spot, kind of your short yardage. Jalen Samuels, Anthony McFarland are going to compete for that, the third down or the change of pace type guy. I'm interested to see if Matt Canada can get anything out of McFarland. He was a guy I was really intrigued by last year coming out of Maryland, a speedster, and he played for Matt Canada when Canada was head coach at Maryland for that 1 year. So we'll see if he can get anything out of that. But yeah, Steelers are easily my number 4 because I'm not taking Najee Harris. If I did take Najee Harris into account, I guess I can make an argument over number 3, but even still, it's just tough because Najee Harris, while he's got everything on paper, I want to see him do it in the National Football League before I put him over my number 3. My number 3 is the Cincinnati Bengals, Joe Mixon here. I like Joe Mixon a lot. Joe Mixon got compared to Le'Veon Bell early on in his career, never lived up to that just yet. I know he had a down year last year, and the Bengals, I think, Ace, am I right in saying that they basically held him out at the second half of last season because of the injury? It wasn't that he was hurt.
The injury in the contract. They didn't want him to hit because he just signed his extension last year, so they didn't think it was worth him being in there.
It is dangerous though because I think, and I maybe this is a bad comparison because Le'Veon took that year off, but he also had a ton of wear and tear. He had 400 plus carries, I think, in back-to-back seasons before getting that year off. And everyone thought, Le'Veon with a year off might come back and be rejuvenated. And boy, that has not been the case ever since. So you wonder with Joe Mixon, look, Joe Mixon's not at a point in his career where, he's approaching 30 yet. And I wouldn't even say that he's got a ton of wear and tear just yet. But you do wonder about running backs coming off of basically a year off like that. And if they still, if their legs are still going to be there, because, like we've seen about running backs, they fall off. I mean, they fall off immediately. It's not a gradual decline. It's an immediate thing that happens to running backs. Not saying it's going to happen to Mixon just yet. I still think, he's got a couple good years left in him. And obviously with Joe Burrow back there, that should open up some things for him this season. And also, look, I don't take rookies into account, but I will say this. I love Chris Evans, and I love Chris Evans in the offense that he's going to be in. The idea of him not having to come in and be kind of an every down guy or, early down guy, he can come in to be the Giovanni Bernard replacement, that kind of, change of pace or third down. I think he's very good out of the backfield. I'm excited to see Chris Evans in that spot. Number 2, I'm going to put the Ravens here. It's tough because the Ravens, look, if we were rating the best running games, well, the Ravens obviously have the best running game in football, right? I mean, that's not a question. The best running back, though, is not J.K. Dobbins. It's someone else. So I think J.K. Dobbins and what he did. Look, if you'll remember last year in the draft, I gave J.K. Dobbins the pick a D. Okay, a D last year for a couple of reasons. One, I felt like they were wasting his rookie year behind Mark Ingram, and you were only really going to have him for 4 years because he's a second round pick. You don't have the 5th-year option. And you don't want to pay him after that because what everybody who pays a running back has regretted it. Pretty much all of the big contracts given out to running backs, you immediately regret it, or you regret it after year 2, and that's pretty much been the case around the NFL. So for JK, I felt like that rookie year was going to be a bust. It was not, though. And this is why I'm on this podcast, and John Harbaugh is the coach of the Baltimore Ravens, because he saw or had the potential that Mark Ingram could, like I said, the fall off. And we saw that last year with Ingram, and Dobbins stepped in and was, he was everything the Ravens needed him to be. Short yardage, yes, but then also he had the big plays that Ravens offense needed in the running game and has relied on. And then, of course, Gus Edwards, who just got paid randomly this week. Gus Edwards has been, Steeler fans will remember that Week 17 game 2 years ago where Gus Edwards tore through the Steeler defense. Edwards is a very good complimentary back in that offense. Happy to see him get paid. I mean, it's kind of strange, but happy to see him get paid. And then number 1, it's not. The Ravens are, I think the Browns are by far the number 1. Nick Chubb might be the best running back in the National Football League. I know there'll be a debate there with Derrick Henry, and you could certainly are arguments to be made for Henry, no doubt, because he's, the guy ran for 2,000. But I think Nick Chubb is as talented as they come. He had the injury last year, but didn't really hamper him, especially later in the year. He came back from that just fine. And then you add to that Kareem Hunt behind him. I just don't know that there's an argument. I know, Sonny, you're going to try and make an argument. I'm interested to hear it. I think that 1-2 punch of Nick Chubb, who I think is again either 1 or 2 in the league as far as talent at the running back position, and then Kareem Hunt behind him. And look, Kareem Hunt at this point, could he start somewhere else? Probably yes. I don't know that he'd be a top starter anywhere else. But as a compliment to Nick Chubb, boy, you could do a lot worse. So for me, yeah, the Browns are my number 1 running back.
Okay. Tony, are you gonna stay here?
I'm gonna try. I'll try to pop in and out as I get signal. I'm currently sitting outside of a Buc-ee's in northern Florida. Buc-ee's, by the way, if anyone's never been to a Buc-ee's, find yourself a Buc-ee's. It is a magical dream world of a gas station / convenience store.
Aren't they the one chain that has like the largest gas station in the world or something like that?
I would not surprise me. It's basically like, I've compared it like this. If you took a Wawa and combined it with a Cracker Barrel and made it the size of a Walmart, that is Buc-ee's. It's a magical place.
Okay. We have a super chat here. The Trib, shout out to you. Thank you for donation, guys. Super chats are available. I forgot to mention that. Questions, derailing, or even your rankings. Make sure you hit that super chat. Running back rank 1 to 4. Ravens with Lamar, Browns, Bengals 4th. Ravens without Lamar. Steelers don't make the cut. Trust. Okay, let me give you my third.
So Lamar is a running back? No, I'm not going to start that fire.
Exactly. They want him to be a running back now.
He comes.
Okay, let me give you my 3, and my 3 are the Bengals. Let me show you some things, because I think Ace here was mistaken when he said that Joe Mixon was splitting carries with Gio Bernard. 2019, 2018, his best years. Agree, Ace?
1,100 yards, right?
Yeah, 1,100 yards.
Okay.
But you also
said, those are some good numbers, right?
Yeah. No, and I'm not disputing that. But you also said that he in those years he was splitting carries and that he was not the bell cow. So I went and checked what the hell
He's never had 200 carries. Like, in order for you to be a bell cow, you have to have like 200 carries.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, and you can go back to Pro Football Reference and check these numbers. Yep. It says 2019 he had 270 carries. 2018 he had 237 carries. Those 2 years, Giovanni Bernard carried 53 and 56. That tells me he was the bell cow. 53 and 56 attempts is essentially you coming here for a couple carries so you can get a breather. Joe Mixon was the bell cow those 2 years, no doubt about it. So saying that J.K. Dobbins, 134 yards, 134 carries. Gus Edwards last year, 144 carries. So essentially they split carries, and I'm not even counting Mark Ingram because he's not here. He's not relevant to the conversation. So I have 2 guys, then between them, they have 805 and 723. So we're talking about 1,500 yards. Yes, those 2 guys, I believe, are better than the one guy, even when he was a bell cow, right? So those 2 guys amount up the same amount of carries that Joe Mixon did by himself. So I can do that comparison. Yes, Joe Mixon is a better running back. And I will say this. Let me also add this caveat. I think if we were ranking running backs, my rankings would have been different. And if I was ranking running games, no. We are ranking running back groups.
What does the poll say?
No, we are. Oh, yeah. Let me check that because I might be mistaken here. Ranking the running back groups in the AFC North. Yeah, not running back games, right? I'm sorry, not running games because I would have put Lamar in a running back game. I'm not even for the Ravens adding Lamar, but running back groups. Yeah. If not, then
so you would take Aaron Dobbins and Gus Edwards over Joe Mixon. Like,
yes.
If you could do a straight up trade, you would do that.
Yes, I would take my 2 over.
Give Aaron Dobbins and
JK.
Gus Edwards our line. I don't think that they're getting 800 yards. Like, no, I don't see that happening.
Wait.
And he got 1,100 yards with bad offensive line.
JK got.
Well, to be fair, though, the Ravens' offensive line wasn't great last year.
Yeah. JK got 805.
They have Lamar Jackson. Who is going to be like, oh, let me stop and get J.K. Dobbins or Lamar Jackson? Like, they're not going to go after – they're going to get yards basically because people are worried about Lamar Jackson.
Again,
it's just like –
I agree.
If you're going to put go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I agree with Ace in this one. It is hard to gauge the how good is a running back in that system? Because look, I mean, Sonny, you have to admit this, right? That running the system that Baltimore runs is so unique and so different that it's hard to gauge like how good is the running back in that system because of everything that defenders have to worry about outside of just like, okay, is J.K. Dobbins going to get the ball on this play, right? I mean, their running game is so unique that it makes it tough to gauge individual play. Now, what we can say is that J.K. Dobbins was considerably better last year than Mark Ingram. I mean, that is not up for debate, right?
Yep. And my point is, if you guys want to penalize the Ravens running backs because of the system, like go be it. I can only tell you by numbers. They're
and
both
by numbers. Neither one has ever.
both of them.
Well, also though, is it? My
Have
question
any of them
is,
ever led the AFC in rushing? Because Joe Mixon has done that. Like
well-
neither of those guys have done that. So you can
And they
take them
won't.
together,
And
but
they
they've
won't.
never led the
They
AFC.
won't.
They've
They
never been the
split in
AFC
carries.
leading rusher.
They split in carries. How can they? I mean, they're
J.K.
literally
Dobbins has
splitting.
never been the leading rusher of the AFC.
course.
Like that is
He's
something
only
that
had 1
Derrick
year,
Henry
though.
won.
He came from a rookie year. My point to you is he will never do it because he's splitting carries, right?
Even if you look at Madden, they're not going to be on Joe Mixon's level. Like
I
honestly,
did, but Ace, I will go back to this. I said if you're ranking running backs, right, a person, and you can say, oh, Nick Chubb, and then if you want to put Joe Mixon, and then you might put whoever, JK or whoever, and my two might be below Mixon. But my point to you is those two, I'll take them over Joe Mixon because I'm ranking the running back group. Look,
sorry, I would not take them over Najee Harris. I would not take them over Joe Mixon. I would not take them over Nick Chubb.
That was your ranking. I find and that is your ranking. It was the same thing when we did receiver, right? I wasn't here ranking Claypool and then ranking Odell and then ranking Boyd, right? I was
different though. You just said yourself.
No,
okay.
because we're doing the group here. Anyway, I'm ranking third the Bengals. If Mixon gets a bad ankle tomorrow before the game, that running game is probably non-existent for that game. J.K. Dobbins cannot play that game.
So in other words, if he gets hurt, Gus Edwards is going to go for 1,000 yards.
Gus Edwards, 3
well,
years.
I think what he's saying there is who's in better shape though. Like if one guy goes down on each team, right? One running back goes down. Just from that room's perspective, who has a better shape, therefore be able to run the ball effectively, the Bengals or the Ravens? And I think he does have a point there that, JK could go down for a game. You can put Gus Edwards in there and Gus Edwards is going to be fine in that role for a game or two, or maybe even for like 4 or 5 games. Whereas with the Bengals, if Joe Mixon doesn't go down, Joe Mixon does go down.
Yeah,
and then what happens to the run game?
I'm not going to say he's amazing. He was solid last year. It's not Joe Mixon. He's not going to have a 2
Is he better than Gus Edwards?
No, I wouldn't say he's better than Gus Edwards.
That's Sonny's point, though, right?
So my other point will be this. Gus Edwards has been in the league for 3 years, right? Since we're more keen on him. 3 years. First year, 718 yards. A guy that came from the practice squad, right? He wasn't even on the roster game one. Second year, 711. And third year, 723. He has been consistent. Carries has been consistent. 137 yards. 137 carries, 133 carries, 144.
Then why are you guys even visiting with Gurley? If the running back room is so secure, why are you visiting with Todd Gurley?
I mean, the Ravens have been adding depth throughout all the positions.
Todd Gurley is in depth. He's not coming there to be on the bench.
What are you talking about?
Wait, Ace, we just ranked the Bengals number 1 at wide receiver, though, and we can say if the Bengals were number 1 at wide receiver, why are they adding more wide receivers in the draft? You know what I mean? Like,
we're talking about
I don't know if speculating whether they're going to bring in an extra running back or not. I don't know where that factors into where they could be ranked here. You know what I mean? Like, I think ultimately Sonny has his position where he has the teams ranked for whatever reason. You obviously disagree with it, but I think we have to kind of.
Okay, so just to move on, for me, Bengals third, and my main reason was, although I like Mixon, actually last year, if I'm not mistaken, I ranked the Bengals second. But I think the Bengals right now, they're more proven than the Steelers, which I have them fourth, but less proven than the other two teams. Let's move on to number 2. Ace, who do you have number 2, man?
For me, it's Joe Mixon, and like I say, it comes down to 50% of the snap shares. I looked at that on PFF. You can look it up yourself. The only people that have in the AFC North that have that share are Joe Mixon, and obviously not last season, but the season before that, the 2 seasons before that. And you're talking about Nick Chubb as well as Kareem Hunt. So those guys have all equally showed that they could have 50% of the snaps. He's got 2 seasons of 1,100 yards. Like I said earlier, led the AFC in rushing, put up half of Dobbins' numbers in 6 games. And he's also a receiver. He can also receive out of the backfield as well. And Joe Mixon's only 24 years old. We're talking about, we haven't seen Joe Mixon's peak yet, or we think that we have. We have not. He's only 24 years old. He just signed a new deal. He's finally going to be the guy. And yes, you can say Gio has only had these little roles and stuff like that, but it's completely about to be Joe Mixon's backfield, and it's completely going to be his year this year. So we'll see at the end of the season what we're talking about. But for me, I'm taking the Bengals with a 1,000-yard running back, and that's what I said. That's consistent. I think Najee Harris will be a 1,000-yard running back. Nick Chubb has already been a 1,000-yard running back, and they obviously have a great 1-2 punch there. And that's why I put Joe Mixon second.
Cute.
Yeah, number 2 here for me is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. Look, they get penalized a lot just because they're number 1 rusher in like every rushing category. You talk about yards per attempt, you talk about touchdowns. Well, not touchdowns, but you talk about rushing yards total and attempts is Lamar Jackson. And obviously Lamar doesn't factor into this conversation because he, contrary to what you would believe if you read Twitter, is a quarterback, not a running back. So that then leaves you in a weird situation where you're looking at J.K. Dobbins and you're looking at Gus Edwards, and the numbers cumulatively aren't going to be super impressive, but essentially they're taking second and third string snaps, behind Lamar Jackson. So the numbers aren't always going to be great. So when you look at them, I think it is important that you look at some of the averages. Now, yards per game aren't that impressive with either of these backs, but the yards per attempt are pretty impressive. I mean, they're even better than Chubb and Hunt. If you look at them, they're 6 yards, 5 yards per carry. They're not the greatest receiving running backs in football. I will give them that. But again, if we want to give asterisks based on what the offense looks like, I find it pretty hard to dock anybody in the running backs for not being able to receive well in a Greg Roman offense where the receivers can't even receive well consistently enough due to some structural things with the offense. So all that, this is still a very productive backfield, still a ton of touchdowns, a ton of yards in between both of them, and it's still pretty deep. If they add Todd Gurley, that's adding even another body in there that can do things. And J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, both under 25 years old. They're both young guys. They both have shown a lot of potential. And yeah, again, they're going to have crazy averages, which is why I don't have them ahead of the Browns, just because Lamar is there and Lamar is going to bring up it's a different situation where you can have your number 1 and 2 running back on the field at the same time, which is structurally how the Ravens can run it out. So yeah, there's going to be a benefit that those running backs are going to have. That still doesn't discount the productivity and the averages that they put up, which were pretty spectacular this year. So that's why I have the Ravens at 2.
Okay, before I give you my 2, make sure you hit that like, also share the content if you can, subscribe, and hit that bell so you know when we come live. Also, give me your rankings 4-1 since we're getting closer. Who's your 4th and who's your 1st from this running back group discussion? Okay, so I have my number 2. And my number 2, contrary to what a lot of y'all gonna believe, it's gonna be the Ravens. Because as we are rating running back groups and not running back game, if running back game was it, well, I think the Ravens is the number 1. We have been 2 years in a row breaking records on yardage, but we're not rating the running back, the rushing game essentially. We're ranking the running back group, and I have the Ravens at number 2. Last year, the Ravens I'm not gonna count what my guy Mark Ingram did. So between the 2 guys, they're essentially coming back. Yes, Justin Hills is there, but Justin Hill has not been productive essentially since he's been in this team. They did. They eclipsed 1,500 yards between them, and that is coming out in the game for a limited, in theory, amount of carriers. And a lot of running backs say, I'm talking Hall of Famers, that it's hard to come in and out. It is hard when you just cannot get your mojo, and it's hard when you're producing and they pull you out. And these two gentlemen still were doing their thing. J.K. Dobbins only 134 rushing attempts. In that, he did 805 yards. Also, to be fair to J.K. Dobbins, in the first quarter of the season, he was barely getting any attempts because they were trying to give Mark Ingram the starting role. And Gus was the second, and then J.K. was the third. And as J.K. was getting carries and basically producing yards per carries, then he overtook. And I think by week 6 or 7, that's when JK and Gus became the 1 and 2. So I think if he would have been the starter, I think it might have been fair to say, or if he would have had the same amount of carries since the beginning, he probably would have.
Mark Ingram only has 72 carries.
Yes, my point is the 72 carries happening in the first couple of games, and in those first couple of games, JK barely carried the ball. That's my point. It's not in the totality of the year. It's in the beginning of the year. JK was more a here 3 or 4 or 5. I cannot tell you how many, but it wasn't much. And then as the year went through, he got roughly split. I would say this: JK probably got a little bit more carries than Gus after that, but Gus in the beginning of the year he was splitting more with Mark. So look, J.K. Dobbins for us was amazing. 6 yards every time, per attempt. And in the case of Gus, we get him at 5 yards per attempt. And in the case of Gus Edwards, because he wasn't a rookie last year, he has been here for 3 years. That's his average in the 3 years: 5.2, 5.3, and 5.0 per attempt. And yes, Gus Edwards probably would never eclipse 1,000 yards with this team, as he's only attempting 130 some rushing, right? Yeah, I will say this: the years that other running backs don't attempt, but especially the one in question with Cincy, 178 rushing for Mixon in his rookie year, 626. J.K. Dobbins, 134, 805. So that's just a 1-to-1. I think the Ravens have a better tandem. I'm not even saying that Mixon is not better than those two. The tandem, in my opinion, is better, and for that, I have the Ravens number 2. Okay, number 1. I think this is a consensus number 1. Tony already gave it that it was the Browns. Ace, who do you have, man?
I mean, it's obviously the Browns. I mean, Nick Chubb is a guy that even with 50% of the snaps was able to have 1,000 yards. I mean, Nick Chubb has had multiple 1,000-yard seasons. Obviously, Kareem Hunt has had 1,000-yard seasons in Kansas City, and before that was pretty close to it last season with the 800. This is the most potent running attack in the NFL. I don't care what the numbers say. It's obviously the Cleveland Browns. They have the best 1-2 punch in football. They have, honestly, that's not normal to have the 1-2 punch that they have, where you have 2 young guys that are under the age of 25 in the same backfield. It's just insane. So for me, it's obviously the Cleveland Browns. You match that with the offensive line that they have. It's just an amazing tandem.
Yeah. I mean, this is the most well-rounded group. And the one thing I haven't heard anybody talk about when it came to these running backs, any of them, which is their ability to pass protect, right? I think that's a huge part of being a running back. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, both very good, very capable pass protectors, both very good receivers of the football too. That's one of the things that put them ahead of Baltimore for me, was that the sheer the more production and specifically touchdowns. I think Kareem Hunt himself had 5 receiving touchdowns just as the third down kind of running back. You look at Nick Chubb's numbers, 9.4 yards per reception. Like they aren't terrible there. He's a pretty good and capable receiving running back, even though since Kareem Hunt's there, you don't really use him in that way. Yeah, the versatility of Chubb Hunt, they're great. They're great running backs out the backfield. They're great running backs as receivers. They're great running backs as pass protectors. And I think that they are 2 starting running backs in the NFL. Obviously, I think Nick Chubb's ahead above the rest. I think it's honestly disrespectful that the number 1 running back conversation in the NFL isn't just Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb, that people want to throw all these other names in there like Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey. No, it's only Nick Chubb and Derrick Henry. Those are only 2 guys who are out there different at that position. And, Nick Chubb has done a tremendous amount of work, 1,500 yards, almost with one of the worst offensive lines of football in 2019. He gets a better offensive line. The yards per average go up. He didn't have more cumulative yards, but he didn't play a full season. Still got to 1,000 yards, which is impressive. While splitting carries, this was very impressive what he did. You can discount him for having the best running offensive line in football. We can discount anybody's running game for having support, but this is football. You're gonna have to work with the support that you have around you and the things that you have around you. So yeah, I think it's pretty obvious the Browns number 1 here. Second, sweep universal number 1 that the Cleveland Browns have had on this show. Just wanted to point that one out when we start talking about rosters and the level of roster the Cleveland Browns have, because I do believe they truly have a roster that has the potential to be great here. But yeah, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, it's one of the best tandems in football. Now they added Demetric Felton in the draft. They're trying to see if they can get more production out their number 3 spot. Last year, they got decent production for what you would expect somebody behind Chubb and Hunt out of Dearness Johnson. Now they're adding the competition, hopefully going to upgrade that spot, add somebody who's a little bit more versatile. And, when you take it all into account, the pass blocking, the receiving ability of this backfield, and just the straight up ability to carry the football, there's no debate, honestly, to me, which team has the best running back room, because they do all 3 facets of what a running back needs to do at a really high level.
Okay. Yeah, I had to put the Browns again at first. The Browns have an amazing tandem. And they have not only the best tandem, if you were ranking just pure running backs, they will have the number 1 running back as well. And their second running back is one of the better in the division as well. They do a lot of things right. Nick Chubb can run the stretch. He can run between the tackles. He can catch. Kareem Hunt, especially on the open field, is a monster. I think Kareem Hunt is more deadly, in my opinion, when he's in the open field as a catcher than he is between the tackles. But dude, this team, and yes, you might say, yeah, they have a great O-line, and okay, good. I mean, they were killing it. They were killing it. They can have a great O-line, but they also took advantage of that and played well. So for me, it was as soon as I because I was debating, and for those of you that follow me on SCG Sports, I talked about this yesterday. I was debating this, and then I was like, wait. I'm ranking not the running game. I'm running back, right? I'm doing the running back group. And at that point, as soon as you're like, okay, it's a running back group, let me just make sure it is the Browns. And you know what? The Browns have good roster, and in the running back area, they did good. So let me say how our standing for the running backs are. Number 1, the running back, the Browns, as Q mentioned, clean sweep. Number 2, the Ravens. Number 3, the Bengals, and number 4, the Steelers. And we only have 1 position left, which is the tight end to rank. So don't
Offense.
on offense. Before we go to defense, sorry. But our overall offensive, how it's looking right now, is the Browns are first, the Ravens are second, Bengals third, and Steelers fourth. And that's how the offensive ranking is.
Right.
Pre-tight end. Okay, this is pre-tight end. So make sure.
It's gonna be bad for the Bengals. You guys will not see me here interrupting people on those takes for the tight
Not as many spirited points.
Yeah, not going to be any fight from that angle. I'll tell you that right now. Just
go
check
be
out
bringing
my
up Drew
video
Sample's
on
yards
Drew
per
Sample,
reception,
and you will understand where I'm going next episode.
So make sure, guys, you follow us on AFC North on Twitter. We're gonna put all the polls there. Also, all the announcements go through there. Also, remember, make sure you like, subscribe to the channel. Also, give comments. I know the guys. I know some people like, oh, you guys don't comment as much. Look, I go back and read all of them. Ace probably and Q and Tony do the same. We just have a lot, so sometimes you just can't comment, but we do read it. Also, we appreciate everybody. The super chat members a way for you guys to get highlighted and ask your questions get answered. We appreciate Manscaped for supporting us and sponsoring the show. And before we go, Q, where they can find you, man?
Find me on youtube.com/Quincy Carrier. You can Google that. You can put it in your search bar. I'll pop up. Also find me on Twitter at Quinn_C. And you also find me just, posting videos, waiting anxiously for this season to start because we are so close, but so far away from September.
This is the part. Ace.
And for me, you can find me on New Stripe City. And I didn't talk about him tonight, but tomorrow we are interviewing Bengals rookie running back Chris Evans. So be sure to tap in. We're going to check him out. Also been in contact with the Bengals. We got some special things going on this season. So be sure to follow that journey. And of course, follow us here at AFC North Talk. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and follow me on Twitter at New Stripe City.
Okay. You can follow me at CG Sport everywhere. Twitter, IG, Facebook, and obviously YouTube. Also, for Tony, Steelers Country on Twitter, Steelers Country with Tony Serino. I think it is his full name of the channel on YouTube. All that is in the description below. Code AFC North Talk is also in the description below. Go check Manscaped. Go check everybody's channel. Guys, thank you for joining us. It was a good one. It got heated for a moment, but hey, that's what you're coming here for, right? It's not all mellow. You know how it is. Yo, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Peace out.
Are you listening? Damn.